Everyone, welcome back to Art of the Part. In this video, we're going to continue on with our conversation of the business card holder case study. And in the last video, we spent quite a bit of time looking at design revisions and optimizations so that we could manufacture the customer's part a little bit easier. So in this video, we're actually going to create some configurations so that we can isolate some of these 5-axis rotations so that it will make our lives easier when we're setting up SolidWorks drawings, as well as levels and layers inside of Mastercam when we are programming for those indexes in 5-axis. So I'm just going to briefly explain why we're doing this and the approach of 5-axis versus 3-axis, and then we'll start to split up some of these configurations. So if we were trying to machine this part in a 3-axis mill, we would have to either set up custom work holding so that we could lock this part into place and then mill these areas flat using a square or a flat end mill. Or we could then use a ball mill and just surface these faces out pass by pass, layer by layer, and make sure that they're all tangent, which would take quite a bit of time. So depending on how you want to really slice that and approach that is up to you. However, if we have a 5-axis machine available to us, we can actually rotate the table, lock it into place, which is called indexing, and we can just face mill these areas, and we could make quick work of each one of these surfaces. So I could rotate the table. So in our machine, this is called a cycle 800 or a swivel or a rotation. And we would rotate it, lock it, and then cut this flat. Then the second swivel or the second cycle 800 rotation would be like this. So we'd lock the table like that, and then we'd cut this flat. Third would look like that. We'd cut that flat. Fourth, we would then rotate it again, rotate it or cut it like that. And then the fifth and final would be rotating it here and cutting it like that. So we want to try to isolate each one of those rotations and maybe try to eliminate some of these pockets and holes so that they don't get in the way when we are in Mastercam and trying to contour, surface, or face mill some of these surfaces here. So that said, we're in the feature tree or the feature manager, and we're going to have to create a handful of configurations in the configuration manager. So we're going to hop over here to this other tab, which is going to be a stem with 2 boxes. It's our configuration manager. And we'll notice that we have a default configuration. So this is stock out of the box. We haven't made any changes. We have to go ahead and add more configurations and then suppress some of these components and link those suppressions to each one of those configurations. So I'm going to start off by looking at this first cycle 800, which is going to be us rotating the table like this, and then trying to eliminate or ignore some of this other geometry. So while we're in the configuration tab, let's go ahead and right click in this blank area and select add configuration. So when we add a new configuration, I can go ahead and name it, and I'm just going to title this first cycle 800. Of course, you can title it, first rotation or first swivel or however you want to look at it. So I'm going to do first cycle 800 because that's specific to our machine, and I'm going to hit the green check mark. So now I have a configuration for default and a configuration for cycle 800. However, I need to go in and actually suppress some of these details or features so that they aren't present in this first cycle 800. This is very similar to what we did when we created machining configurations in the yield pop topper case study, and I removed some of those chamfers so that it would be easier for us to machine those or add the chamfers into Mastercam. So I'm going to hop over here to the feature tree, and inside the feature tree I'm going to try to get rid of everything that isn't included on that first cycle 800. So for instance, I know just by going through all these features in the last video that everything past this mirror 1 is going to be the additional swivels like 2 through 5. So I'm going to select that first mirror and then hold down the shift key, and I'm going to go and select everything down here to the split line 2. So all of these features right now are linked to swivel 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm trying to isolate cycle 800 or the first cycle 800 or the swivel 1. So while I'm still holding down the shift key, I'm going to right click on one of these features. So I'm going to right click on mirror 1, and then I'm going to choose suppress. So suppress is that icon with the 2 boxes. One of them is transparent, and then there's an arrow pointing down. So I'm going to select suppress, and that's going to turn off all those other features on this one configuration. Now, we didn't delete those other features and they're not lost, because if I hop back over here to the configuration manager, I can actually double click on the default and all of those details will come back. So first cycle 800 will now be locked and linked to that first swivel and then this one face. So we're going to continue down the line here, and I'm going to add a second cycle 800. So I'll right click in the configurations tab, add configuration, and I'm going to title this second cycle 800. Again, this is our second rotation or our second swivel. And we're going to jump over here back to our feature tree. And you're going to notice that we're going to be jumping back and forth quite a bit and, suppressing some components, adding configuration, suppressing, so on and so forth. So for this configuration, now I actually want to turn on or unsuppress the mirror, which is going to be the second swivel. So I'll click on that feature in the feature tree, and then I'll select unsuppress, which is actually the same icon as suppress, but instead of the arrow pointing down, it's the arrow pointing up. So I'll select unsuppress. There's an error there, that's fine, it's just giving us a notice. And you'll see that I now have the first and second cuts in the swivels present in my second cycle 800. So again, we're going to continue down the road, and we're going to go in here and to the configurations tab, right click, add configuration, and we're going to title this next configuration third cycle 800, and then hit the green check mark. So inside that third cycle 800, we'll jump back here to the feature tree, and we're just going to turn on, I believe it's going to be this cut extrude 2. So I'll right click the cut extrude 2, I'll unsuppress it. That's going to be our third cycle 800. And then you'll probably guess, but the next couple features are going to be the fourth and the fifth cycle 800. So I'm going to jump back here to the configurations, right click, add configuration. We're going to title this fourth cycle 800, green check mark, go back to the feature tree. We'll select the next detail or the next feature, which is cut extrude 3. We'll unsuppress that. So that's front face for the hex block for the day of the week. And then we'll go back here to the configuration manager, right click, add configuration, and we'll title this fifth cycle 800 and hit the green check mark. And hop back over here to the feature tree, and then we'll select the cut extrude 4 and then unsuppress that. So you can see that we now have all these cycle 800s independent of each other, as well as independent of the other features like the drills, the pockets, the slots, so on and so forth. And those details are still present in the background. And you can see if I hop over here to the configuration manager, I'll just cycle through all these different configurations. So I'll double click on default. This is where everything is present. I have all my text, my logos, so on and so forth, as well as my slots and my drills. And then if I go to the first cycle 800, all of that's turned off except for this first swivel, this rotation, it isolates it. Second is these two details. Third is those two details on the side, and then this rotation in the front. Fourth is going to be the additional rotation for that daily hex block. And then the fifth is going to be where the nameplate is going to go, or the name engraving is going to go. So we made pretty good work of that, and now when I pull these configurations into Mastercam, and I'll show you that when we get into the Mastercam videos, I can actually select which one of these configurations that I want to import on a specific level or a specific layer. So that's very helpful. I'm even going to go one step further in this video, and I'm going to make different configurations to include these pockets as well. They're not necessary, but it's just a good habit to get into. So I'm going to make another configuration down here, and I'm just going to name this Pocket 1. And we can go back into this configuration here, and I can kind of just suppress some of these features down here at the bottom. I should have probably gone on another configuration and just like continue to unsuppress details, but we're already here. It's not really going to make much of a difference. So if I select, for example, cut extrude 6 all the way down to split line 2. I hold down the shift key while selecting those details, right click on one of them and then hit suppress. We're going to isolate that first pocket there on the business card holder side. And then we're going to continue on. We'll go ahead and make another configuration in the configurations tab for the second pocket. Or sorry, we're going to name that pocket 1. I can click on that. Pocket 1, or pocket 2, my apologies. 2. And then we'll go back into the feature tree and then we'll unsuppress this pocket here for the sticky notes. And then lastly, we'll come in here and we'll add configuration for pocket 3. And then we'll go ahead and unsuppress this detail right there. So not really going to make too much a difference when we get into Mastercam, but it will help us, especially when we're making the drawings inside of SolidWorks drawings, because I can kind of isolate the swivels from the pocket details themselves, which will help us to detail those out, especially for programming it here at the machine. So that said, go ahead and just rebuild all of your configurations. If you're in the configuration tab, just cycle through them so that they all have a green check mark next to them. Another quick rebuild on this detail, if you ever want to do it, is if you right click on one of these features, you can go and select configure feature, and this is going to open up almost like an Excel table here where you can choose what feature you want on or off. But I'm not actually going to utilize this specific function in this video. However, I will go to where the rebuild active configuration icon is, and then hit the drop down menu, and I can actually select rebuild all configurations. So if you have like 10 different configurations like we do on this part, it might be easier just to go in and rebuild it in one spot rather than going in each one of these configurations and rebuilding them one by one. So I'm going to go back to the default, and then I'm going to go ahead and save this, and we'll continue on in additional videos looking at this inside of Mastercam as well as maybe SolidWorks drawings. So I'm going to File, Save As, and then I can title this Revised as well, or Revised. For me, I have multiple copies, so I'm just going to name this Revised too. So thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.